Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast.
Can I just say, Jay, you should stick to dad jokes. They seem to come natural to you.
Do not encourage him.
James, over under 5.5 minutes did it take Jay to sit and work that out?
Oh, gosh, probably an hour.
And this is an absolute catastrophe, and it speaks to disorganization, lack of communication, and just downright disarray.
Oh, we got more than just dad jokes. Free agency, the draft, breaking news. Here we go.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry, hold on.
32 SuperFans.
I couldn't understand a word they were saying.
One PodVader.
You fired up for that, man? Huh?
Every angle of the NFL covered.
We on go time. We still on go.
This is Next Fan Up.
We're live, bro.
Hello and welcome to the brand new edition of the Next Fan Up podcast. Hey everybody, PodVader here, and it's not really a brand new edition of the podcast because I'm still here with Neil, our Washington superfan, and James, our Eagles superfan. It's the same superfans, same PodVader, brand new format. Hello, gentlemen.
Well, the one good thing, of course, is that now this ridiculously boring football is over, we can talk about proper things like asparagus, cauliflower, and your French pronunciations.
Oh, bonjour. Je m'appelle PodVader.
I figured this offseason we'd actually get into the things that really matter with football in the offseason, that is politics.
Yeah. I'm feeling none of that is going to happen.
And also, I think one of the key topics is when teams destroy other teams with ridiculous trades.
That is going to happen in just a moment. We're going to get into all of these things, but just to further explain the new format of our show, which is really an old format. It's not really all that new either, but
this is going to help me a lot, Jay. Carry on.
We're still sticking to our core principle, which is we are 32-ish. And if we're lucky, really only 15-ish super fans of the NFL. And we love talking about football, and we're going to talk about it until we're done talking about it. Sometimes that'll be longer than 60 minutes, but I promise you, no matter how long our show is, you're going to learn something, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to be entertained. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for whenever I do one of these podcasts with
You are the Rush Limbaugh of this podcast.
Well,
ouch.
That's not, I don't know. In some ways, it's a compliment. In other ways, it's not.
No, it wasn't a compliment.
No way a compliment.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for nothing. In the offseason, we are going to be focusing on three aspects of the NFL, and that is obviously the latest news, whatever is happening. That's what fans are going to be talking about. We're going to talk about free agency because that's always fun to talk about, and the draft, which is also extremely fun to talk about. And before the actual NFL draft, we'll have the 2021 Superfan Super Mock Draft. We're going to try and hear from more of our super fans. We're going to try and incorporate more voices as much as possible. You will probably hear from James and Neil on the regular. As I suspect it's been the case for 7 years now. We are going into our 7th year of coverage of the NFL. That will probably not change much. We'll have some roundtables, although the roundtable for this particular show has been scrapped due to some breaking news, which we're getting to. But like I said, ultimately, we're going to have some fun talking about the game we all love. And, every now and then Doc will show up and give us a recipe, and maybe he will talk about asparagus.
Hope so.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's jump into the breaking news. This literally happened right before the podcast. This, by the way, never happens. Breaking news like this usually happens after we're done recording, after the podcast has been posted. Thank goodness it happened right before we started. Carson Wentz has been traded to the Indianapolis Colts. And boy, what a haul the Philadelphia Eagles got, James. It is a 2021 third-round pick and a conditional 2022 second-round pick that could turn into a first. Now, my son gave me the details on the conditions, and it's basically Carson Wentz needs to play 75% and not start, just play in 75% of the games, or 70% of the games, and the team makes the playoffs. So basically, you're getting a first-round draft choice.
Yeah.
In 2022. This in hindsight of the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff deal, where the Lions ended up getting multiple first-round picks and a starting caliber quarterback in return for Matthew Stafford. Wow, the Eagles got fleeced.
Yeah, this is just this looks even more damning considering what happened roughly a month ago when the team fired the head coach. And I said then, I still maintain now, that had nothing to do with coach and quarterback. It was more so coach and GM. Now it seems like the GM just pretty much wanted to, I don't know, show his big boy energy and flaunt the organization like he's the one who's really running things, because now he's gotten rid of the head coach and, air quotes here, star quarterback within a 30-day span. If you're an Eagles fan, I can't see how you have any hope going into next season of us winning any games. I'm putting the over-under right now at 5, and that's probably being generous. Based on Carson Wentz's last season, dumpster fire. I honestly didn't see anyone really ponying up anything for him. I didn't think this was a trade that was legitimately going to happen. But if this is what it took to get him, I mean, sure. And
just on that note, if this is what it took to get him, I'm mad that my team didn't get him. And Neil should be mad his team didn't get him. Because, Neil, you need a quarterback, too.
Hold on. Wait. I'm going to wrap it up with this. I want you to understand that 3 years ago, NFL Network's, top 100 players in the NFL, and this was after he tore his ACL, he was ranked like the number 5 player in the league. Going into this season, he wasn't ranked at all. So in 3 years, he fell from number 5 player in the league to not being ranked, and this was quite possibly his worst season as a starter. He only played 12 games, and he led the league in interceptions. I'm going to say that again. 12 games and led the league in interceptions. I don't understand how anybody would want this type of player, especially with all the damning evidence that's come out since the end of the season, as far as how he was butting heads with the coach. I'm not going to say he wasn't getting along with all the players, but changing plays in the huddle and at the line of scrimmage to spite the coach, best efforts to try to get this team to play well. These are not good looks on him. So if Indy is a change of scenery he needs, good luck. But as far as me being an Eagles fan, good riddance, because he's been a headache all year.
I think it's maybe worth just looking back to the 2016 draft when Wentz was the second overall pick in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the whole story there, of course, because Cleveland held the second pick in that draft, and they traded that pick to the Eagles, and along with a 5th round pick. And they had to give up. The Eagles gave up the 8th overall pick, a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, the 1st round pick the following year in 2017, and a 2nd round selection in 2018. So they already gave up a lot for the guy, and there they are. 5 years later, and
5 years later,
5 years later, it's been a disaster, not only for the player himself and for the team, but also for the front office, the relationships between the head coach has been fired for reasons that are all now thrown into a melting pot. We don't quite know what's going on there, why that actually happened. We thought it was because Roseman wanted to keep Wentz, but that doesn't seem to be the case, obviously, now. And now they trade him away and they get barely anything for him. And it does. Jay's right. It stands out when you look at the trades for Stafford, and then they're talking and Goff, and then they're talking about Derek Carr maybe being worth 2 first-round picks. I mean, that guy has fallen he's fallen to earth from a really high height, James, and it's an absolute disaster, isn't it? It's just a disaster from start to finish. And maybe they're just drawing a line under it now and saying, that's it, we're done with this and move on. But then it does beg the question of who's going to be your quarterback.
Jalen Hurts.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is going to be the starting quarterback. Think about the cap hits we're going to take over the next 2 to 3 seasons because of Wentz's contract and the guaranteed money we gave him a year or so ago.
I think you should do that. I'm not going to do it.
It's only $30 million.
It's only $33.8 million.
And Jalen Hurts is on a rookie contract, excuse me. So it has to be Jalen Hurts, and you'd have to sign a backup for virtually nothing.
Well, then let me take you back to the last week of the season where there was a lot of hoo-ha about why the Eagles brought in Sudfeld and took out Hurts when it looked like you might come back and threaten.
Hey, Neil. You should be saying thank you for giving us a division. We appreciate it. Please try to do it again next year.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's I think it's probably a given right now. But you did all that, and everybody said, "Oh, it's to get up from the 9th pick in the first round to the 6th pick in the first round," and everybody laughed at that, at the time. But now there's that plan looks as feasible as any other theory or plan around this whole business, because now I think you're in a position where you could do a 2016 and get trading up again for one of the quarterbacks. Because it's not going to be Jalen Hurts. He's not a starting quarterback in this league for me.
Well, it is going to be Jalen Hurts because the Eagles.
It's going to be Jalen Hurts.
The Eagles are currently $47 million. This is before the Carson Wentz trade. Are currently $47,339,596 over the cap, assuming the cap is $180.5 million.
Sure.
The league just sent out a memo that the floor will be $180 million. That will be to expect the salary cap at its least.
Yeah, but I think the Eagles will draft a first-round quarterback now.
Well, they're going to have difficulty getting there, and we'll talk a little bit about those first-round quarterbacks in just a little bit in our draft segment. But to further throw insult to injury on this, it's a $30 million cap hit for the Eagles. Meanwhile, the Colts will owe Carson Wentz a $10 million roster bonus, a $15.4 million salary that's guaranteed for a $25.4 million cap hit in 2021, a $22 million cap hit in 2022, $25 million in 23, and a $26 million cap hit in 24. That is reasonably cheap considering what the quarterback market is today. The Colts made out big time on this deal. And with that $25 million cap hit, as I'm looking at overthecap.com, the Colts, who were currently second in cap space with $68 million, you take the 25 off that. I went to Emerson. That's still $43 million. That still puts them ahead of Washington for the fourth amount of cap space in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well,
the Colts are in a good spot. We're in our free agent segment. We're going to talk about selling your team to free agents. The Colts now have a big chip to sell to a lot of potential free agents.
You don't think there's a little hint of racism involved here? I mean, just picking on the ginger kid.
What?
When did redheads become a race?
Oh my gosh! Really, Neil?
I think so, James. I think there's some serious questions to be asked.
No. Because then you got to bring in Andy Dalton. No, I mean, let's not do this.
That's about as minor a minority you can get, and you're just picking on them. If he was blonde and blue-eyed, you'd have probably given him a contract extension.
All right. On that note, it's time to get.
Although no, there's one more note.
One more note.
One now that I've upset James, I might as well carry on. It's got to ask some serious questions, James, which you haven't touched upon, and probably because you don't want to. But what is happening to the Eagles franchise? This is an absolute catastrophe, and it speaks to disorganization, lack of communication, and just downright disarray in that front office. What's gone wrong in Philadelphia? 2 or 3 years ago, you were Super Bowl champions.
Mm-hmm. Two words: Howie Roseman. And I've mentioned it at the end of the season that if you paid attention to what's been happening in Dallas and how Jerry Jones has been running that organization, the Eagles are pretty much mimicking and copying everything they've done as far as their dysfunctionality that happened when Jason Garrett was the head coach and all the different voices they put in his offensive staff that he didn't hire. The organization hired and told him these people are going to help you run your offense, and it ultimately got him fired. The same thing happened with Philadelphia this last season. Howie Roseman hired a bunch of people, told Doug Peterson, you're going to take these two extra coordinators on your offensive staff. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to take them, and ultimately that got him fired. So, I mean, I honestly don't know. And here we are at a quarterback crossroads that we shouldn't have found ourselves in, much like Dallas is in right now with Dak Prescott. This is not something to emulate. We said it years ago when Dallas was going through this nonsense. It's not going to work out for them, and it hasn't. And I said all year, this is not going to work out for Philadelphia. And
I'm just looking here, James. I can confirm that in Britain there is such a thing as gingerism, and it is dealt with as a racist prejudice against people who are with ginger hair. So I'm accusing the Philadelphia Eagles right here, right now, of gingerism.
Todd, what's our next topic? Or can I get into one of the stories I wanted to talk about?
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Moving to the news, ladies and gentlemen, the rest of the news from this week in the NFL, yesterday, today.
Things happen in the NFL. That's why there's This Week in the NFL, yesterday, today.
Gonna put on my newscaster voice here as best I can. Our lead story this week is no longer the lead story because we just had it.
Can you do your French accent for us? I like that a lot.
No. Tampa Bay celebrated their Super Bowl victory with a boat parade. Scotty Miller did drop Chris Godwin's phone into the ocean, but Cameron Brate caught the Lombardi trophy tossed to him by Tom Brady from one boat to another. That is not a joke. Nor was the fact that Tom Brady was absolutely lit on apparently avocado tequila, which I don't know if that is a joke or not. But in any case, the daughter of the craftsman responsible for creating the Lombardi wants an apology, saying, quote, I have a big history of this trophy being made by my father, and it's such an honor, and I know all the craftsmen that made it when my dad was there, also at Tiffany's, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work, a lot of hours go into it. It really upsets me that this trophy was disgraced and disrespected by being thrown as if it was a real football. Lorraine Groves is this particular person.
Jay,
cold day in hell mean anything to her?
Jay, I hate to break this news to you because someday one of your loved ones should really do it to you, but you're too old to use the word lit.
Oh, well, sorry.
There we go.
Do my best.
I mean, as am I must say. And James too, he's 44.
Lorraine continued, this has nothing to do with your athletic ability whatsoever. It has everything to do with disrespecting a highly coveted trophy that a lot of work goes into by all the other silversmiths and all the other team players. I personally would like an apology, not just to me and my family and the other silversmiths, but to the fans, all the football fans, the other team players. On behalf of the SuperFans here at Next Fan Up, we are not looking for an apology from Tom Brady or any of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As a matter of fact, where was this woman just a couple years ago when a certain man named Gronk used the Lombardi trophy as a baseball bat, denting a trophy.
Dent in the trophy. Yes.
Yes. She was not calling for an apology then. I don't know why she's calling for an apology now.
Oh, and Pod, what Gronk did to the trophy isn't the worst thing that's happened to the trophy. If you listen to retired players do interviews on almost any radio show 5-10 years after they've won a trophy and done playing, the stuff they do to that trophy in the locker room post-game when the cameras aren't around is insane.
I believe you can talk to any of the Stanley Cup holders about some of the insane things done to that particular trophy.
I mean, that's on a whole nother level. I mean, but just staying with the NFL, what the NFL players do is nothing close to what the Stanley Cup players do.
I've been watching the Stand reboot on CBS All Access, soon to be Paramount Plus, as we were informed during the Super Bowl. I believe things done in New Vegas could be linked to things done with the trophies.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. As Texans in America deal with power outages from the weather, Houston Texans are experiencing low wattage, parting ways with their defensive veteran J.J. Watt With more on the state of the Texans, I shall now hand it off to our Texans correspondent, James.
Thanks for the intro, Pod. So the state of the Texans is roughly similar to the state of Texas itself. Very chaotic. No one really seems to be in charge or doing anything properly. It's frozen and yet super dynamic. Where to start? How about the best news or the least bad? That's J.J. Watt getting his release from the team. That's not super surprising. He was either going to be restructured on that contract of his. He wasn't going to be getting paid, the $15 to $17 million. This gives him his release and allows him to go to another team. Throughout the season, I mentioned that, they should do right by JJ. I imagine he wanted to stay on for the entirety of the season. But, if he would have wanted to be traded to some other team and the Texans got like a 4th round pick or a 3rd round pick, anything for him, I think they should have done that. JJ is a pillar of the community. Enough cannot be said. He's raised tons of money, hurricane relief. It would not shock me to see that he's raising money for the current state of Houston as is. Class act. I hope all the best for him. For his future, I see him potentially as like a Dwight Freeney type role. So Freeney left Indianapolis, went to San Diego, and then Arizona and Atlanta. I mean, Freeney had a relatively productive second half of his career. And that's really what JJ's going to do. He can't, well, he probably could, but he shouldn't play 100% of the snaps. He should play, 30-ish snaps a game, situational, slowly even bring that back. And then also help like young defensive ends, which, everything inside of JJ Watt's character that he has portrayed seems that he'd be more than happy to like help young guys along. Awesome landing spots, let him chase a ring with the Chiefs. Packers would be kind of fun with the University of Wisconsin tie in there. He's been slated to go to Cleveland, or he's expressed a little bit of interest in Cleveland. That would be interesting. I just hope he stays away from Indy and the Titans, both of whom have huge needs at defensive end. Deshaun Watson. In the season preview, I said that Deshaun Watson was going to star in Get Out 3. Following behind Dwayne Brown and DeAndre Hopkins. So possible landing spots. Denver has been mentioned a few times. I know Miami has been mentioned, as have the Jets. I think Watson will end up staying on the Texans only because I don't think the Texans will be able to get as much as they want. I don't want that for Watson. I think he deserves better. A shot to actually play for a functional franchise. And as far as like an asking price goes, I think what Matt Stafford got as far as trade value is probably what's going to keep Watson on the Texans. I don't think any team is going to want to go exceedingly high above that. And what Stafford did, or what Stafford received, is definitely the bare minimum for what Deshaun Watson would command on a trade market. Interestingly, the reason I want Watson to be able to move on to bigger and better things is he's kind of destined to have that Matt Stafford career arc in Houston, playing for an absent / dysfunctional front office, never really getting a deep playoff run. But, hopefully that will turn around. Hopefully he remains a Texan. But if he remains a Texan, then yeah, we're looking at like Matt Stafford 2.0 type career, which is quite sad. That brings us to why are we talking about this in the first place? And it's because the Texans front office is absolute trash. Jack Easterby continues to purge the front office of anybody that he did not personally hire. They brought in Nick Caserio, who the Texans had to pay a penalty for tampering prior to, I believe, last season because they wanted to bring him in as GM. So I know the glass half full approach would be to say, well, he's going to bring in his guys. They're going to get a complete overhaul. What's to say that they won't, bring in the right people and that this will turn out nicely? And I think it's very telling just what happened with Bill O'Brien. So I wanted Bill O'Brien gone prior to the season. Instead, Easterby held on to him for the first 4 games. And I'm no Bill O'Brien apologist, but there was no point in having him coach those first 4 games and then fire him. It was arguably the toughest stretch of the Texans season. They weren't going to be doing particularly well at that point. It's almost like Easterby needed a fall guy. And to think that Bill O'Brien was one of Easterby's guys, he lobbied really hard to bring him in. Like, how can you go work for Easterby knowing that the second things get tough for Easterby, he's going to turn on you to stay in power, stay what he is doing, and just use you as a scapegoat. Deshaun Watson is obviously not super thrilled. I don't know how you, as the Texans, couldn't tell that consulting firm that you brought in to shortlist a handful of GM candidates, like, here's an extra $50K, just throw Nick Caserio on there so we can save face. Easterby instead was allowed to kind of go off menu and dictate to Cal McNair who exactly they wanted the GM to be. Good luck with that, I suppose. David Culley, I don't have a strong feeling towards him one way or the other. I wish him all the best. He will be the oldest head coach to make their debut, I believe, which is nice, I suppose, but it's clear that he's there for the short term. A lot of rumors are that they just have a coach in waiting already. And so Dave Culley is just going to be there for 2 years, step aside gracefully, and then bring in another head coach. And what this tells me is that the Texans are like 2 years away from being 2 years away, to borrow a phrase, I believe, from Michael Wilbon. It's really depressing to see because they're in a huge cap hell or cap situation brought on by themselves. This, despite the fact that 2 years ago they came into the league with $77 or $80 million in cap space. Last year they entered free agency in the offseason with $44 or $45 million in cap space. All they've managed to do with that money is like blow it on Randall Cobb. Yes, they've signed Watson to an extension, but that didn't come off of the cap at the time. They gave a truckload of money to Laramie Tunsil. And so now there's going to have to be a ton of cap casualties, including nice veterans, including fan favorites, just so that they can stay under the cap. And there's no talent coming in to replace that because, they're not picking until the third round. If you want to get really specific, Dave Culley may have been swayed to be the hire just because, as part of the NFL's new enticement to hire more minority candidates, they may get draft compensation for that down the line. I'm not saying that is the reason he got hired. He seems incredibly capable based on the previous jobs that he has had. I'm just saying that based on Easterby and possibly Caserio coming from New England and them doing everything they can to maximize their picks, that could have played a factor, that could have been a tiebreaker. It is just such a mess in Houston, which is why I'm happy for JJ. I'm rooting for Watson to get out, and that is the state of the Texans right now. So back to you, Pod.
Thanks to James for that bleak outlook on what it means to be a Houston Texans fan these days, but doesn't look good. I want to go back and revisit what he had to say about Brian Culley here in just a little bit. But in other Texans news, we have the Deshaun Watson rumor of the week. And this one comes to us from Dave Klug on Twitter. According to Panthers beat reporter and ESPN insider D. Newton, ESPN, the Panthers are prepared to make a strong push for Deshaun Watson and, quote, will do whatever it takes to get Deshaun Watson. And that includes giving up 3 first-round draft picks and Christian McCaffrey. How's that deal for Carson Wentz look now?
Mm-hmm. That's like 6 Carson Wentzes, is it?
Yeah, something like that. Texans,
Jay,
yes.
Every deal will look better than this deal for Carson Wentz. Every deal. Every single one.
Texans aren't the only team making cuts as others are trimming their rosters for cap reasons. The Carolina Panthers are a bit taller today, as according to Adam Schefter, they have released 2-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle Kawann Short.
Oh no!
Teams in the market for defensive tackle help now have another strong option, even though he's a little short. It's big short. That's like game time. Dad joke Thursday.
No.
I
applaud the Panthers' effort for trying to get a player of Deshaun Watson's caliber. I just don't know. I would also give up Christian McCaffrey to try to get him. You kind of want to keep as much of your offensive firepower as possible. And don't get me wrong, Davis did a good job in spelling McCaffrey, but McCaffrey's just different at the running back position than Davis. And that type of versatility is hard to come by.
Well, and not to mention Curtis Samuel, one of their number one wide receiving options, is available as a free agent. So unless they re-sign him,
that receiving core wasn't that great. I mean, it's not much better than what he had in Houston.
I mean, that's fair comment, guys. Fair comment. But you've also got to look at it and say they had a fairly encouraging season last year, and that was without McCaffrey. So maybe he's not as important to the franchise as maybe his salary would suggest. So,
as I also pulled up the Carolina. Well, wait, one more quick thing. As I pulled up the Carolina Panthers roster, 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen are also free agents.
Yeah,
so
no.
But you did seem to, Jay, you did seem to raise your eyebrows at the fact of when you read out 3 first-round picks from Christian McCaffrey. You think that's too much?
No, I mean, I don't. But if I'm going to compare it to Matthew Stafford for 2 and a starting caliber quarterback, and now Carson Wentz, a 3rd and a 1st in 2 years, I don't know. It's a lot.
But you can't compare the quarterbacks, isn't it? One of them's a starting caliber quarterback, and the other one is Ginger.
I think you're a gingerist, or whatever it is that you were trying to say before.
I went to school with somebody with ginger hair, and everybody called him Ginger. That's what they called him, Ginger.
I'll bet his name was Trevor too.
No idea what his name was.
More cuts. At Field Yates tweets, the Broncos have released cornerback AJ Bouye, a move that will create $11.7 million in 21 cap space. Cornerback is near the top of Denver's needs this offseason. Pick 9 could be a sweet spot in the draft for someone like Alabama's Patrick Surtain II.
Too high for Surtain, that.
At Ramon Foster tweets, it's my honor that my brothers from another asked me to announce the next stage in their life. After over a decade, Marquise Pouncey and Mike Pouncey are retiring from the NFL. They'll be going into that CBD business that Gronk left upon his return to the NFL. I guarantee it.
All right, they won't be going on the world tour to try and exonerate Aaron Hernandez, no?
That part, I don't know. Maybe. Speaking of the Steelers, they are doing the Ben Roethlisberger I may not play next year thing on his behalf this year. As Brooke Pryor tweeted out, Steelers GM Kevin Colbert doesn't give a strong endorsement for Ben Roethlisberger as quarterback in 2021, saying, quote, as we sit here today, Ben is a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He reiterated to us that he wants to continue to play. We told him we have to look at this current situation. The Pittsburgh Steelers are currently $30.6 million over the cap.
Isn't Ben's cap number this year somewhere close to $40 million?
Sounds about right.
And they just picked up Dwayne Haskins, didn't they? So that's sorted.
Yeah, sure. Dwayne Haskins, new starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That should go well.
It can't be any worse than what Ben did towards the end of the season.
I don't know. I will gladly take Ben Roethlisberger because he can't be worse than Cam Newton. He really can't. Tom Pelissero tweets out, the Raiders plan to release wide receiver Tyrell Williams at the start of the league year next month. Per source, Williams missed the entire 2020 season because of a shoulder injury that required surgery, but should be fully healthy in 2 to 3 weeks. He's still only 28. Ian Rappaport says $11.5 million comes off the books. Our Slack channel, which includes Eli's Red Hot, that's Crazy Jared. So the Raiders really are preparing for Juju Smith-Schuster. Pretend Raiders fan, that's Monty, says no Deshaun Watson. And actually, Monty said a whole heck of a lot more. This is the most expected cut of all time. Las Vegas is $18 million over the cap, and Williams was due $11.5. They drafted his replacement in Brian Edwards, and Williams has never been healthy since they brought him in. Tyrell Williams made $22 million over the past 2 years, including a $1 million guarantee for the upcoming season, 42 catches, 651 yards, 6 touchdowns. Just like Bill Murray, every February, Crazy Jared shares every Skip Bayless tweet about free agents being tied to Gruden. Click, 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 click. Las Vegas is not going to get Watson, a Jujag, Julio, or anyone else that will get clicks, just cleaning up the books and looking at how they're going to get better on all 3 levels of defense. By the way, My team has a jersey waiting for Tyrell Williams. He's a key in all of my Patriot rebuilds on the Madden video game. Just saying. NFL rumors and news reports or tweeted Dolphins expected to cut wide receiver Albert Wilson before the start of free agency. This saves the team around $3 million of cap space. And yes, the obvious question here, as everyone is asking, is who is Albert Wilson and why was he making so much? And why is he making it into our news segment? That's because Chiefs Nick said, there's our cheap Sammy Watson replacement, Albert Wilson, who I believe was a Chief before he was a Dolphin.
He was a Chief.
Just going to say that.
They traded him to the Dolphins for something or someone. And I can't remember what though, but he was a Chief.
And does Albert Wilson play on the offensive line at times? Does he?
No, he's a wide receiver.
Like you said, it's a cheap Sammy Watson replacement. But quite honestly, there's a number of cheap Sammy Watson replacements in free agency this year.
Sammy Watkins.
Watson, same difference.
There's a difference.
They're both worth 3 first-round draft picks. Not really.
Isn't Sammy Watkins a flat earth kind of guy? Isn't he one of those guys?
It could be.
I hope that was tongue-in-cheek.
No, I think he is. I'm almost certain he is. He's crazy in some ways, isn't he? He does that sort of crazy.
Well, speaking of crazy, Dan Campbell, the new head coach of the Detroit Lions and biter of kneecaps,
We're going to bite a kneecap off.
has finished assembling his coaching staff and includes 8 former players. Offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn, defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, assistant head coach / running backs coach Deuce Staley, quarterbacks coach Mark Brunell, offensive line coach Hank Fraley, and defensive assistant Kelvin Shepard. I don't know if Dan realizes these coaches won't be allowed to actually play on Sundays. They're only allowed on the sidelines.
You know, 2 of those guys are former Eagles, so good luck to you. I will miss Deuce Staley on the Eagles sidelines, though.
I do quite like. I always liked Mark Brunell. He was one of those quarterbacks I thought was quite underrated. I didn't realize he was now coaching. That's good.
Well, he
was.
You
also missed
last year. He was an analyst,
the wide receivers coach.
Good to know that something's good happened to him. But I still can't get over the Lions and all this kneecap nuzzling business.
Well, they say a kneecap with a little salt and pepper goes a long way.
Sure.
And let's fade out the music.
Maybe some cauliflower au gratin.
Maybe. Let's fade out the music for this story because I have a feeling James is going to want to reply to this one. And that comes to us from CNN. A day after his controversial hire, the NFL's Jaguars said Friday that Director of Sports Performance Chris Doyle has resigned from his position. Jaguars head coach Urban Meyer said in a statement, quote, Chris Doyle came to us this evening to submit his resignation, and we have accepted. Chris did not want to be a distraction to what we are building in Jacksonville. We are responsible for all aspects of our program, and in retrospect should have given greater consideration to how his appointment may have affected all involved. We wish him the best as he moves forward in his career. For those of you not understanding what the controversy is, Chris Doyle is the former Iowa strength and conditioning coach. And he basically had a few nasty things to say to some players who have accused him of racism. Shortly after, the university and Doyle agreed to part ways.
Yeah, and it wasn't a few. It was a routine of his. It was part of his day-to-day life. He's with these players, most of whom are African-American, and a lot of the current players and former players from that program have had issues with him, and I don't know why it took the university so long to take action. But, this goes to a concern that's just beyond football. And it speaks to an issue that, particularly with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the good old boy network is still in effect, because anything Urban Meyer says, as far as we did our due diligence, as far as looking into, they didn't do that. Because if they did, this is national news. This made national waves, not just across the college spectrum, but across the entirety of what was going on at the time when this happened.
I just read the story directly from CNN. This isn't a sports outlet. This was CNN.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It was national news. I'm not talking about what happened with the Jaguars. I'm talking about when the things happened when he was let go at Iowa State. That made big news then at the time that it happened when he was released from him and Iowa State, quote, split ways.
Iowa, not Iowa State.
Iowa, split ways. It was national news then. It wasn't just college football. It resonated on all levels because NFL players who came through that program spoke out in droves as well, trying to figure out why he was still there because on their way out they had, grievances against him.
There's an important other aspect to this, obviously not as important as that aspect, and I think that obviously the right decision's been made. But there's something here about Urban Meyer and about the fact that he's learning very quickly that this is the NFL. This isn't some college where he's in charge of the world and he can do what he likes when he likes. In the NFL, it's a public face, and if the public don't like what you're doing, they will sort that out for you. And I think it's a big reminder to Urban Meyer that he's got to lose that arrogant streak that you see so often in these sort of college head coaches who just think they can do what they bloody well like. So I think this is a good day and a good example for change in the world. And of course, Chris Doyle has to have another chance. He has to have the opportunity to become a better person and continue with his life, or else what's the point? But I think this is also absolutely the right move, that they can't be seen to be doing that at such a high profile level. And it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Does make you wonder in what world some of these owners think that sort of move is okay.
Well, Neil, 2 points there. One, it's not arrogance; it's ignorance. As far as
it's both, James. It's both.
Yeah, on the head coach's part there, because like you said, at Ohio State, he was basically master of his own universe. You can't do that on the NFL level. And like I said earlier, there was no due diligence as far as looking to, like, the moment his name was mentioned, red flag should have gone up.
I know exactly.
To ignore that, to blatantly ignore that and say, nope, I don't care what he did in his past. His past is his past. We're not going to deal with that. We're not going to address it. No, his past is just as recent as 3 or 4 years ago. This wasn't something that happened like 20, 30 years ago in like the late 70s, early 80s.
And it also wasn't a one-off. It was a prolonged thing.
No, it was prolonged.
That's who he was. Career. Yeah, it's who he was. Let's say who he was. Let's hope it's not who he is, but it's who he was. And I think you're right. It's arrogance and it's ignorance, and you think arrogantly you think you can do what you like, and then ignorance to the fact that you overlook such a thing in the climate we live in today. 10 years ago, that probably would have been a different story. But in 2021, after the 2020 we've had with the whole Black Lives Matter and the Ginger Lives Matter thing, then I think we've realized that you can't live like that anymore. You can't do it.
Now, the second issue I have with Urban Meyer is the fact that he has very poor character awareness of his staff. I mean, look at the fiasco at Ohio State that forced him to resign.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Exactly, yeah. Him constantly picking these individuals with very poor character, whether it's race.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Well, let's not forget Aaron Hernandez was also his head coach.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
I think let's be
the
fair.
Florida program he had is ridiculous, and someone pointed out in our Slack channel that team that he coached had something like 13, 14 players on it who run afoul of the law at some point since then.
And serious fouls up with the law, yeah.
And we're not talking about simple DUIs. We're talking about jail time for all of them.
Hold on a quick second, Neil, because I have a couple more questions about this, because we have praised the NFL for their system of awarding draft picks to teams that have gone and hired people of color in their front office. Should we be removing draft picks when they do something like this?
We should remove draft picks for a lot of things. I don't know if it's a penalty. The reward system is fine to go the other way. I mean, on the outward source, I can see the answer being yes. Me personally, I don't think so. It's pretty much just, look, the embarrassment in and of itself should be ridicule enough for them going forward for a number of years. Is saying, like, looking at the ineptitude of this dumb organization for hiring this guy that everyone in the world knew you shouldn't be hiring, but they did it anyway.
But then, James, I would counter that by saying that it's actually a triumph and a positive step forward. That the outcome is that 2 or 3 days later, was it a day later even, that the society spoke, if you like, and the guy was removed. And I think that's a really positive thing, because that tells you that there's a majority out there in the world who feel that is not acceptable, and I think that is a really good thing. The one thing I would like,
but yes, Neil, even one step further, you're working in an environment where 65 to 75% of the players that you're going to be around are African American.
Sure.
How long do you think your attitude is going to fly when you treat the majority of your players one way?
I get all that, James. But I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make is that 10 years ago, we would not be sitting here where a day or so later the guy is removed, and that is a positive step, and we should embrace that and not get lost in the job's been done, but we should be at least noting that has been a success.
For me, this is what should have happened anyway. Like, he should have been removed in no more than a day or two. So they did what they were supposed to do. Big whoop. I'm not throwing a parade because you did what you were supposed to do.
But James,
if you hire him in the first place, this wouldn't even be a story.
But James, I would implore you to at least see that although the original decision was obviously clearly wrong, that at least the right outcome has been arrived at, which is something that's not happened very often in the past. Now, the one thing I would say is I would really very much like to see his settlement package from this. That would be what I would like to see. Just from a contract, obviously my life of contracts, I would like to see how that looks, because.
Well, he did resign. He didn't get fired.
Well, let's. I think the wording was slightly different, wasn't it? In the original thing, it was the, he didn't want to be a distraction, so he stepped away from or turned down or whatever the role. I'd still want to see the package that went with that. Personally, that would be because I think that man's gone away with a 7-figure sum.
Unfortunately, Neil might be right.
Neil might be right, but I don't think so. I don't think. Yeah. I mean, that could be me being naive, but I really don't think that. Well,
I can give you some stats there for you, Jay. That I remember there was one day in 1984. I think it was in July, and I was wrong once, and that was about the only time that I can remember.
Speaking of being wrong, teams can be wrong in the draft, and I think it's time.
James, you're up
to transition to my NFL draft conversation. Now, in the past, I would have reached out to Scott Wright from NFLDraftCountdown.com. However, Scott Wright has informed me he has left the business, at least the draft business. He actually got a dream job with a sports trading card company. So he is no longer doing draft coverage. But
what's a trading card company?
You don't have trading cards over there, and you must. No?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Get a little card, pack of cards. Sometimes they have gum. Topps is probably one of the most famous ones for baseball cards.
Like Panini stickers.
Yeah, sure. You guys have stickers, not cards?
Well, here we get stickers and you put them in a book. You'll have like Liverpool, and then you'll have on the book will be the players, and then you get the stickers and put the stickers into the place in the book till you get the whole team, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that seems like a waste, because now you can't get any value back for trading this. You can't trade the stickers.
Oh, but if you get the completed book, it's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. That sort of thing in 10 years' time.
Wow,
it's like that, but without the sticky bit.
All right. Yes, exactly. So anyway, that's what Scott Wright's up to, and so it is my pleasure to bring in Brian Bosarge of DeepFriedDraft.com. Brian, thanks so much for stepping in for Scott Wright. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, getting a dream job that wasn't involved with the NFL draft. I mean, what is he? That's ludicrous.
Why would anybody want to live their life? I tell you, do it. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad Scott recommended me to you, and I'm always happy to talk NFL draft.
That is great. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on sort of how you got into the NFL draft stuff and why is this your passion?
Well, I mean, I guess probably the base of it is I'm born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, still live here to this day, always been the home of the Senior Bowls going back to the 50s. And they use the hashtag now, the draft starts in Mobile, and it truly does. And I went to my first Senior Bowl in 1987. I'm 42 years old now, so I was probably, 7 or 8 years old, and it stuck with me ever since. And then I watched my first NFL draft on television in 1990, and I have not missed a televised pick ever since. I've been obsessed with the draft, and then finally in 2012 I decided, hey, I was probably late to the game by then, to be honest, but I said let's start putting this put the pen to paper, so to speak, and get it out there.
Great. So we have deepfrieddraft.com. Is there anywhere else people can find some of your draft takes?
Deepfrieddraft.com is going to be the main hub. You can follow me on Twitter at deepfrieddraft. I'm on Facebook, Deep Fried Draft there. Social media everywhere. It's all the same.
Awesome. So reason why we wanted to start bringing in some guests, especially about the draft, is this year I think is going to be probably the toughest draft to really assess, with some of the players opting out, didn't play last season. Some of the teams didn't play at all last season. And now there's no combine. It feels like that big holiday that you get right after the Super Bowl is done isn't happening this year. It's kind of a letdown.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, and it's especially for NFL teams, they may be able to deal because they'll have access to the information that somebody like myself and you and normal fans won't have access to is the information. And even from the pro days, with the combine, you can't hide the numbers. They're televised. You see it. It's there. But now this year there's no combine. So we're having to depend on hopefully every team having a pro day. Some teams, like some in some of the states that are still locked down, may not even be able to have pro days at their campus. So, and then we're hoping, what information are we going to get out of these pro days? Are we going to get accurate information out of these pro days? Is it even going to filter out to us? So it's definitely going to, for somebody like myself, for sure, it's going to really complicate the process for stacking some of these position groups and ranking some of these players.
Some of the guys that I used to work with, some of the guys that you'll see on TV at, the big 4-letter network, they always talk about the tape, and it seems like this year is going to be more about the tape than ever. But really what I think is going to make things more difficult is, let's take a guy like, Penei Sewell, who didn't play last season, had an excellent season. The one season we did see him play. How do you sort of rank that type of player when you're going through all the tape and you're trying to figure out, well, this guy really is a top of the class offensive lineman?
That's a great example with Sewell. He has, the season of 2019. So that's the only tape you can go with. And if you're not somebody like me who didn't, record games, from 2 years ago and still have them on a hard drive, you could, you have to depend on YouTube cut-ups and such of that to try to go back and watch him. But you wanted to see, okay, he was absolutely a stud in 2019. Did he progress even more, or does he have a letdown season? You don't know. So you're taking that chance on somebody like Sewell that he is who you saw last year, and you don't have another year to bounce it off of. And another prospect like Sewell that is really like that is Gregory Rousseau from Miami, who he came to Miami as a wide receiver, converted to defensive end, and his redshirt year as a redshirt freshman had 15 sacks, and he was just absolutely dominant. He opts out of this season, so all you have is the redshirt freshman season to go by. So it's definitely challenging for that.
So with pro days becoming that much more important, as I'm on your website and I look at your updated list of pro days and the date that they're at, Arkansas kicks things off on March 10th, and that's the earliest that we have a pro day. You have a schedule here that goes all the way down to April 9th. And forget me if I'm mistaken, but I believe the draft is April 29th, right?
That's right. But that's actually not out of the ordinary, so to speak, because pro days have typically started like a week after the combine usually is, which usually runs at the end of February, maybe first couple of days of March. So it's the timing of the pro day schedule is not out of the ordinary, so to speak. And we have always, like in recent years, Alabama, because of injuries and such, they almost have always had two pro days. They had one in early March, and they had a backup pro day in early April, where like some of the guys who maybe were too banged up to go in March would turn around and run in April. So I don't think they're going to do that this year, but I mean, that has been the case in the past. So yeah, I mean, the pro day schedule typically, will cut off, around that time. And then that's when you would start seeing teams bring in what they call their 30, because teams were allowed to bring in 30 players on visits to their facility. They can't do that because of, the COVID restrictions. So they would also be allowed to bring in any player that played college or high school football within a 75-mile radius of their city. They can't do that anymore. So that's how teams like the Bengals could bring in guys from Louisville and, they were from Dayton, stuff like that. They can't do that anymore. So, yeah, it's really complicated. You have to get all of your information from these pro days that you hope you're able to go to.
By the way, Brian, you'll find that I'm easily distracted, and I see on April 1st, Oklahoma State has a linebacker who has made my all-name team of all time. Amen Ogbongbeniga, I'm going to guess, is how you say his last name. I have no idea. But it's fantastic. It is quite possibly one of the greatest names I've ever seen for a future NFL star. I don't even know if he can play. All I know, he's got a name. And that's the best part. Let's talk about guys that can play. And really, I think what we as fans would like to know is sort of who should we be watching for? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk in the first round. There's a lot of analysts will go and they'll focus on the first round. They're obviously going to focus on the first few picks. I think it's pretty much written in stone at this point that Trevor Lawrence is the number one pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I guess the question is, who comes next? And is there going to be a position like quarterback that's going to dictate this draft?
Well, you could almost say in almost every draft of the last at least decade, quarterback dictates the draft. That position will always decide who does what and when, for the most part. Not always, but for the most part in the last 10 years or so, quarterbacks dictate the draft. That's going to be the case this year. You said Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville, like I said, unless he starts smuggling cocaine between now and the end of April, he's going to be the first pick in the draft. But so now you're at the Jets. New coaching staff, new front office, I believe. So, okay, are we married to Sam Darnold, or are we going to try to we've gotten rid of Adam Gase. Do we try to build around him or do we trade him off for some picks and just continue this complete start over? I think that's what they're going to do, is to start over. I think they're going to look at quarterback. Okay, so now it becomes, do we like Zach Wilson? Do we like Justin Fields? Do we like Trey Lance of North Dakota State? Somebody else? I mean, it becomes that. And then on and on. The Dolphins, okay, are they going to trade for Deshaun Watson? I don't think Watson's getting moved. That's my personal feeling. But if they do, then, they're going to give up the third pick to Houston, who is probably going to get Tua back. So that wouldn't be a quarterback position there. But then Atlanta, okay, Matt Ryan, he's on the back end of his career now. Are we going to get a quarterback there? And then it becomes that. Our team's going to trade up for quarterback. So that's why quarterback, especially in this draft, is going to dictate everything that happens in the top 10 and, beyond in the first round.
So if we're looking at the quarterbacks, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, of Trevor Lawrence. And then there's sort of another group of quarterbacks right after that. Let's say it's Trey Lance. Let's say it's Zach Wilson. Let's say it's Justin Fields. Is this draft class, though, are these group of quarterbacks more like the 1985 class of quarterbacks, or more like, a worse one?
you have the most famous quarterback class of all time was 1983. I think that's where you were going.
83.
With Elway leads off, and then we go to Todd Blackledge, who missed, Jim Kelly, Hall of Famer, Ken O'Brien, miss, Tony Eason, miss, Dan Marino, Hall of Fame. So you had 6 quarterbacks go in the first round, all, three are Hall of Famers. Ken O'Brien was solid, and then you had 2 busts. Okay, so then you come back 1999, where you have 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. You have Tim Couch, no. Donovan McNabb, good. Achilles Smith, terrible. Cade McNown, bad. Dante Culpepper, good. So you had 2 out of 5 hit. So it's like, are we in that range where I think we're probably going to see 5 quarterbacks go in the first round? I don't think it'll be 6, but I believe you're going to see 5 go in the first round. And history tells you that at least 2 to 3 of those are going to bust.
That's really disappointing for a fan of a team that needs a quarterback. Be careful what you say about Tony Eason, my friend. He did get to a Super Bowl, but he was a miss. A big miss.
What happened to him in that Super Bowl? It wasn't good, sir.
No, it wasn't. What about some of the other positions? What are some of the other positions that we should be watching? Maybe some guys that aren't getting any pub. I'm hearing that this wide receiver class might be almost as good as last year's wide receiver class. And frankly, last year's wide receiver class, I don't know if they lived up to the hype.
Maybe not in the first round, maybe not initially, but I mean, you had, early second round, you had T. Higgins, who had 1,000-yard or should have been a 1,000-yard receiver for Cincinnati as a rookie. He was the first pick in the second round. So Brandon Ayuk, I think, was a late first round guy. He was solid. Jalen Reagor was hurt most of his rookie season. CeeDee Lamb started coming on towards the end of the year as a good. Henry Ruggs was not, he was up and down. But Jerry Jeudy, I think he's probably going to be more in line for, a better year if they get consistent quarterback play. But wide receiver is one of the deeper, if not the deepest position groups of this draft class. I think I've got guys who I think could probably contribute early in the NFL, potential 5th-round receivers, somebody like Sage Surratt from Wake Forest, who I think, in a normal season would probably go in the 3rd-round area, probably going to go in that 5th, maybe even early 6th-round area, but could contribute as a rookie. I think offensive tackle is another group where you can potentially find a starting offensive tackle, into the 2nd, maybe even early part of the 3rd round. Same with the edge rush class. I think there's going to be 19, 20 guys that go in the first 4 rounds are going to compete for playing time early on in the NFL.
Interesting. Are there any names like Sage Surratt that we should be paying a little bit more attention to that we may not know yet?
Oh shoot, yeah. There was especially at the senior. There was guys at the Senior Bowl, man, that just looked outstanding all week. Demetric Felton from UCLA, 5'8", 189, was a running back for the last 2 seasons with the Bruins. Doesn't play running back all week, and was a tremendous route runner. Speed, quick, great hands. He's a guy that he's going to help out. And that's the thing with some of these guys. These guys that go in 3rd, 4th, 5th round, they've got to be special teams players at the NFL to make that 45-man roster on game days to even be able to contribute. And I think Felton's one of the guys. Shi Smith, South Carolina. Cade Johnson. You're going to see a lot of Cade Johnson from South Dakota State. Amari Rodgers from Clemson. These are all like your smaller guys, but they all do one thing that is needed in the NFL now is they create their own separation. And that's where the NFL's going, is you need receivers that the big body 50-50 ball guys, you're kind of seeing those go by the wayside, so to speak, where the NFL is now wanting to get all of these receivers that can make their own space. And I believe those are guys that, in the 3rd, 4th round area that you're going to, see them contribute in the NFL.
Excellent. Brian, from deepfrieddraft.com. You can follow him on Twitter, same at Deep Fry Draft and on Facebook as well. Brian, thanks so much for coming on, giving us a quick primer on the NFL draft. Sure, we're going to hit you up here as we move along and maybe talk a little bit more about some of the specific positions and some of the specific players that you're taking a kin to.
Anytime, man. Just you got the number now, so just call me anytime you want to talk ball.
Thanks to Brian. I will definitely talk to him. I will tell you off the air, I was asking him about some deeper round quarterbacks, and I'm going to be very interested in talking about those guys. Obviously, a lot of the attention being placed on the first round quarterbacks, where Brian said he believes that there's going to be 5 in this year's draft.
Good man.
I'm going to be more interested in the guys in the later rounds that, are going to pop up and surprise. Where's the Tom Brady? That's where everybody wants to know. That 6th round guy is going to be a starter. Probably.
Jamie, did he mention Jamie Newman?
He did. And the guy I asked him about has got a better grade than Jamie Newman.
Mm-hmm. Who was
he's not as high? He's not as high on Jamie Newman as you are.
No. Who did you like? Kyle Trask? These guys?
No. Kyle Trask is much higher than that. He liked
Galen Mond.
The guy I was asking him about was, and again I forget his name, who transferred from Texas because he lost the job to Sam Ehlinger to SMU. Yeah, look him up.
That's deep.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff we'll be bringing you on a weekly basis.
Patriots, is that right? Is that what I'm getting? The only reason you're asking because you want him for the Patriots.
I don't know why you would think that. Let's talk about free agents. Gentlemen, we have a few more minutes left to talk, and we have some audio from some of our super fans. We're calling this segment Free Agency Fire Sales, just because I wanted the alliteration. Didn't really work. What we asked the super fans is, who is your number one target? How will they make your team better? But more importantly, what can your team do for them? Of course, we can all say we want the number one free agent target, according to Pro Football Focus, Dak Prescott. We all want him, but we're all not going to get him, and most likely no one's going to get him. He's going to stay in Dallas. But who is that guy, and what is your pitch? Because as we know, these free agents now are trying to NBA-ify the NFL and all sort of trying to plan on going to the same team as much as they possibly can. So what is your pitch? And, let's start with the guy who lost the Super Bowl, shall we? Let's see what Nick has to say and who he's pitching.
This is Kansas City Chiefs Nick talking about what we want in free agency. Anyone who watched the Super Bowl probably thinks that the Chiefs need to really go hard and fast at offensive line as soon as possible. But the crazy thing is that the Chiefs went into last season with a pretty well-constructed offensive line. They just had 2 guys opt out. They had both tackles get injured, and they just, they had other guys banged up the whole way through, and there's just not enough. No team has enough starting quality O-linemen to deal with the amount of losses that the Chiefs had going into that game, and it was just an unfortunate scenario. I don't see them really being able to afford a major signing, but what I would like to see is, maybe they give a guy a 1-year deal who's going to chase a ring, and an older veteran perhaps, because the Chiefs are likely to get back Eric Fisher at some point during the season. Mitchell Schwartz is a bit of an unknown, but one of the opt-outs last year was a guy who projected well as tackle, and he was a 3rd-round rookie, so you have him in the mix as well. I think the guy I would most like to see on that 1-year deal is Trent Williams, and the pitch is, come get a ring. Let's see. And it's a similar pitch for what I really also want, which is wide receivers. Somebody to replace Sammy Watkins, somebody to really compete for some attention outside of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. There's a lot of wide receivers coming out this year. It's going to be a year where a lot of teams are cash-strapped. So I think probably our best options are going to be guys like Keelan Cole or Albert Wilson, who knows the system. Try to bring them in for somewhere in the mid-single-digit millions, and pitches, again, hey, maybe a short deal, but who are you going to look better catching balls from than Patrick Mahomes? But if there is one splashy move that the Chiefs could make, it would be in that same position group, and I would totally sign on for it. They would have to move some money around to really be able to pay a guy, but if they could really throw some money and figure out a way to make it work for a guy like Allen Robinson or Kenny Golladay as the new wide receiver 2, whoo boy, this would be a scary offense. That's who I want. So Allen, Kenny, we may not be able to give you all the money you want, but we can give you all the postseason success and all the numbers you'd want. You're going to look good in Kansas City.
Nick's pledge for Trent Williams is chasing a ring. I don't think Trent Williams is about chasing a ring. I think Trent Williams is all about that money, man. Get that money, man. Trent Williams is not going to the Kansas City Chiefs unless they're going to pay him, and they don't have the money to pay him.
I would be stunned if Trent Williams leaves the 49ers. Stunned.
He also mentioned Kenny Golladay or Allen Robinson, and I'm hearing rumors those two guys might get franchised. So try again, Nick. None of your top free agent targets coming to the Kansas City.
I've got to say, Nick's usually pretty good, but that's pretty unimaginative for Nick.
It really
wouldn't you say, James?
I mean, those are the guys that pretty much their teams are going to do everything to try to keep them. I don't expect either of those two wide receivers to trade teams. Trent Williams, maybe, like you said, if someone throws enough money at him, he'll probably leave Frisco. But the lure of, I can win a title, understand a couple of years ago, he just wanted to be healthy.
Yep.
So,
great.
All right, well, if you want imaginative, I'm going to present to you Justin, our Seahawks superfan.
No, something that's never really mentioned around Justin. Imaginative and Justin, are they ever used in the same sentence? Not sure.
The situation for the Seattle Seahawks is absolutely terrible. You have a star quarterback who is butting heads with the front office. You have less than $5 million in cap space, and you only have 5 draft picks in this upcoming draft. This is a team that doesn't have the ammunition to rebuild either through signing veteran free agents or through the draft. So as a result, really, if there's one thing that I could wish from this team this year, it's that they just accept where they're at, they take their lumps, and they start laying down the foundation for a competitive future. The Seahawks can't even trade for lower price players on other teams because they don't have the trade ammunition for it. Instead, they're going to make moves, but it's going to be to trade out of their better bad picks to get more even worse picks. Just look at the players who are leaving the Seahawks. Greg Olsen, KJ Wright, Bruce Irvin, Quentin Dunbar, Jacob Hollister, Benson Mayowa, Carlos Hyde, Mike Upati, backup quarterback Geno Smith, Ethan Pochick, your left guard, Nick Bellore, your Pro Bowl fullback who went to the Pro Bowl for special teams, but still, fan favorites like Luke Wilson, both Griffin brothers Shaquille and Shaquem. This is a roster that was bad and is getting worse. If the team is going to be more proactive, though, I think the only thing that they could do is get rid of Carlos Dunlap. He's a nice player. Honestly, had a lot to do with the defense getting a lot better last year, but the fact remains that he would save the team $14 million, and that's frankly $14 million that they really need, and they can invest it on something that I think will make Russell Wilson happy, and that's the offensive line. Alex Mack is available. At this point in his career, he's really a stopgap player, and that's, I think, what the Seahawks need. He's a veteran who is used to playing in a zone running scheme exactly like Seattle does. If you could bring in somebody like Alex Mack, who has a trusted left tackle like Dwayne Brown, and a promising young up-and-coming player like Damian Lewis, I think you have the start of an offensive line that you can start to transform. If the Seahawks manage to draft well in a draft that has a lot of good offensive linemen, and start rebuilding that left guard position, that has been vacated by Mike Iupati, then I think you can really make a difference and satisfy both Russell Wilson's need for better protection and Pete Carroll's desire to have better run blocking. Other than that, honestly, I want the Seahawks to stay pat. I think the Seahawks need to take their lumps in 2021. I think they need to accept that they're going to have a subpar roster, do the best that they can to develop and get through the year, protect your quarterback, and really hope to be competitive in 2022. And in the case of the Seahawks, by competitive, I mean competitive in the postseason. I think that as long as they have number 3 behind center, they're always going to be competitive to win any football game.
Justin's getting rid of Carlos Dunlap so that he can acquire Alex Mack in free agency, and that's basically to keep Danger Russ happy, because right now Danger Russ is reportedly unhappy in Seattle. But he ultimately says they don't have a lot to do and they really can't do anything, so his thing is to just do nothing. But if they do nothing, they won't keep their quarterback happy. And that's what is most important for Seattle right now. And so Justin has failed. But at least he was a little bit more imaginative than Nick and didn't shoot too hot trying to get Alex Mack for a year to keep his quarterback in town.
Yeah. Go Hawks.
Newsflash, Seattle's going to need more than Alex Mack to keep his quarterback healthy. They're going to need the other 4 positions at offensive line as well.
All right. I have one more recorded. So let's listen in from a guy we haven't heard from in a lot lately. Here's a Chicago Bears superfan, Tom.
Hi, this is Tom, your Chicago rep. I expect the Bears to take a double swing at the quarterback position this offseason. I would suggest that they'll probably sign a veteran in free agency and draft a quarterback somewhere along the way in the draft to develop behind him. I'm going to make the case for the Bears to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick in free agency. The choices aren't really great, and Fitzpatrick's older, but he might make a good segue to a rookie quarterback. He's smart. He's got all the intangibles. He knows how to develop relationships in the locker room. Everyone seems to like him. And more importantly, there have been times over the last couple of years where he's basically carried the Dolphins. He probably will come at the right price, and I think he'll be good for a developing rookie. So that would be my suggestion, not the most exciting suggestion that you could make. But I think that might be the way to go. We'll see what the Bears think of it.
Tom's top target is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Guess what, Tom? You win. You can have him. Wow. He's all yours. There you go. That was easy. Also sounds like his cat is trying to talk him out of it because, quite frankly, if that is your top free agent target, I think the Bears need a lot more than Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Well, having said that, they did appear to be the second team in the Carson Wentz running, so they've managed to dodge that bullet. So maybe it's not so bad. And Tom usually has pretty good stuff going on, I think.
By the way, again, if that's true, and it was a third and a conditional second that turns into a first, how in the world did the Bears not outbid? Like, if you really wanted the guy, let's take out the fact, Neil, that you think Carson Wentz is not the guy, right? But the Bears did. If you think he's the guy, why wouldn't you give up a second rounder just to beat the other team?
Well, there's the one other aspect you've got to add into these trades is that it's a three-way thing, isn't it? You've got to have a team who wants the player and wants to make an acceptable bid, the team who will accept the bid, and then you've got to have the quarterback, or in this case, the quarterback who's got to agree to the trade. I don't know if did he have a no trade clause in his contract, James? But even if he didn't, if he said, "Look, I'm not going to the Bears, no way am I signing for them," then the Bears won't make a final bid, will they?
I don't believe there's a no trade clause in his contract. And basically the Eagles could have traded him wherever they wanted to. It just works out that the team he's going to now happens to be his former OC. So,
but the Bears would have said to Wentz, they're going to trade you to us. Do you want to play for us? If he says no, then they're not going to make an offer for him. That's how it goes, doesn't it, these days?
Pretty much. I mean, he could refuse to play for them, but I mean, the only way trades get rescinded in the NFL is if players fail physicals.
But so. the Bears just wouldn't enter into that discussion if they knew that Wentz didn't want to go.
Oh yeah.
It's a waste of everybody's time.
Carson Wentz would.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like the days that's where your NBA style comes into it, Jay. Because back when I first started watching this sport, if you were traded to a team, you went to the team. And that was the end of it.
All right, so I looked over the list of top free agents as listed by ProFootballFocus.com because they're one of the only places that currently has listed their free agents in a ranking in this manner. And I was going to make a pitch for Chris Godwin to the Patriots, but then realized Godwin just won a ring and plays with Brady, and Brady's going to trash the Patriots from here till the end of eternity. And same thing would be for Levante David. I'd make a pitch, but again, Brady's going to talk him out of it. Here's my pitch to my top target, listed at number 28 on Pro Football Focus, safety Marcus May. Yo, Marcus, you really hated playing for the Jets, huh? How would you like to hand it to him twice a year? come here, play for one of the best defensive minds the NFL has ever known, and we're gonna give it to him twice a year. Come on. Come over here. By the way, don't worry about the competition. Kyle Duggar's here. He's actually he's on the rise. He's going to help you out in that safety position. Devin McCourty, we're actually going to let Devin go because we're going to let his brother Jason go, and Devin's not going to stick around if we let Jason go. So you don't have to worry about competition. You'll come right in. We're going to slot you right in. It'll be you along with Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips. We've got a great safety room here in New England for you, Marcus, and you're going to hand it to the Jets twice a year. Come on over, my friend. What do you think?
That's not going to work considering the new head coach is a defensive mind and is probably going to turn May loose.
The defensive coach is going to have to do a lot of talking to keep Marcus May in town. Marcus May wants out of there just as quickly as Jamal Adams got out of there. And now May has control.
Well, yeah, May can do whatever he wants since he's a free agent. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure Saleh is making a pitch right now to try to keep him in town. I don't think it's going to work, but I mean, it's not any better in New England.
Oh, it's way better in New England. They got a much better defensive setup than what the Jets got going on.
Yeah, I think.
And the Bills are still the best team in that division, right?
Just there's a bit of a Jay. I can hear myself in what you're saying, and there's going to have to be a realization at some point for you that a team like the Patriots, you're going to have to overpay for guys now because you're not in that elite echelon of teams who can say, "Come to us because we're a contender," and that's going to be a realization for you, which is it's not a nice one to have, and I think. Do you want to overpay? And if you do you want to overpay for a strong safety? Or a free safety? So, yeah.
No, I don't.
So I don't know. I'd save your money and put it elsewhere. I think May's a good player, but I also think James is right. Salah's come in there with all his pomp and that, and players will have seen what he's done with that San Francisco defense over the last few years. So they probably give him a chance. So I would expect May to stay, but he's a good player, and he's probably still young. He's only been, what will he be, about 26, 27?
Yeah, I think he's super young. I think he's 26.
Yeah, he'd be his first contract. So yeah, or second contract. So yeah, good player though. Good player. I do wonder. You guys mentioned Chris Godwin before. I have he just drops the ball too much for me, Godwin. I'm not a Godwin fan. I know he's high on the free agency list and that, but I'm not a big Godwin guy, really. I kind of think he's one of those players who looks better because he's never getting the opposition's top corner on him.
That part. And where is Godwin ranked as far as just wide receivers as far as available? Like how does this list rank him? Like, because he can't be the top receiver available. There have to be better options. And I'm not saying anything. Yeah, and I'm not, saying anything against Godwin, like, of his talent level. He's a very solid wide receiver, but to Neil's point, look who he plays opposite of in Tampa Bay. So unless you've got a number one that draws coverage in your team, there's really no point in trying to go out and get Godwin. I always shy away from signing that number two wide receiver that's coming off a big year, or in this case, winning a Super Bowl, who's trying to get the bag. Because this is really what he's looking for. He's trying to get paid now like a number one wide receiver. Like, I want a Super Bowl.
You're absolutely right, James. I couldn't agree with you more. That's absolutely. There's so many mistakes have been made in that sense for years. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So Godwin, by the way, was the 36th ranked wide receiver by PFF in 2020, but was the number one in 2019. Allen Robinson's ranked right below Godwin. He was the 5th ranked wide receiver, though.
But I think what James is alluding to.
As far as ranking the free agent wide receivers right now,
I'm telling you right now, PFF has Chris Godwin as your number one available wide receiver.
Number one best option wide receiver in free agency. Yeah,
Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster. That's their order.
I think.
I would take I would take Smith-Schuster over him.
I just don't think Godwin passes the eye test to be a number one receiver. Day in, day out, your number one guy going up against the elite coverage across the field. I just don't see him as that. I really don't. I think he's a good player, obviously a good player, but he for me, you say, well, Mike Evans is a number one receiver, and I don't think Godwin is quite in Mike Evans' class. I think Robinson, for me, if I was choosing one of those receivers, Jay, I would choose Robinson. I think he always is a bit older, but I think he is a number one receiver, and I think he's proved that. Okay. He just needs a half decent quarterback to throw him the ball. If Allen Robinson was playing in a team with a Rodgers or a Mahomes, he'd be up there with some great seasons, I think.
Let's go to Buffalo Rob. His free agent target.
Oh God, JJ
Watt. Bills are going to bring a similar roster from 2020 to 2021 with only slight changes. One area of opportunity on the D-line where they are paying plenty of underachievers. Step in Mr. Watt. He has excelled in a defensive system similar to what the Bills run and provides the Bills work exactly what they need. More of a pass rush. Kansas City exposed the front four. JJ would benefit from coming to the Bills because they have a fairly deep rotation, so he would not be asked to play heavy minutes. He would also benefit from the Performance and Recovery Center on the Bills campus, which is top of the line. Seriously, Google it. It's awesome. Cole Beasley said it blank all over anything Dallas has. Also, the Bills are good.
That's not hard to do, though.
And he will play deep in the playoffs if he signs with us. Go Bills. Neil's response, which he didn't say for the podcast, is Kawann Short is better. To which Rob said Kawann Short didn't make the list, the Pro Football Focus list, because Kawann Short was cut this week.
That's true. I mean, I fully get where Rob's coming from. I think he's absolutely spot on in terms of the needs for the Bills to get some greater sort of pass rush anywhere on that defensive front, and that's an absolutely fair point. But I'm just not sure that's the Buffalo way. I think they've built that roster through low-key free agency and excellent drafting over the last 2 or 3 years from a outstanding front office. That's what one looks like, James, by the way. And you have to sort of say that 17 million would be the cap hit. Is that right? Something like that for Watt next year. And that guy is. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's one of those players who can probably give you 20 to 25 really good snaps every game. I'm not sure he's an every down sort of guy, and I'm not sure it's the Buffalo way. But Watt's a good player, clearly.
Well, he's not the only team getting pitched. Jordan, our Titan super fan. JJ Watt, I have mixed feelings about this, not only because he's been a rival for so long, but because he's old with a big injury history. But our GM confirmed today that we have had contact with him, and we need all the pass rush help we can get. So beggars can't be choosers. Here's the pitch. Come reunite with Clowney, reunite with Vrabel, beat up on the Texans twice a year, be on a contending playoff team. Our owner, Amy Adams Strunk, donated $1 million to Watt's Hurricane Relief Fund a while ago, and he was very thankful for that. So they seem to have a good relationship already. Watt once said how the Texans should be able to wear Oilers throwbacks jerseys, so why not just join the Titans? There you go.
How much do you guys think that Jordan and all these other guys who want not just our super fans but across the NFL fandom, they want JJ Watt? How much are they kind of just thinking about it's the name, isn't it, JJ Watt? If it was JJ Voltage, we wouldn't be having the same sort of feelings, would we?
I think there's a lot in the name, but at the same time, JJ Watt, I mean, last year he didn't perform at the same level that he did earlier in his career. And yes, he's had a lot of injuries, but he did play every down last season, and he was a difference maker despite only having 5 sacks. So I'm sort of with Texans James, where Texans James said that he sees JJ Watt's second half of his career being very much like Dwight Freeney's. So yeah, I agree with that. Is he worth? Is that worth $17 million a year?
Yeah, no, probably not. You just used the term difference maker, and I'm not sure. Is he a difference maker? They were. Were they 4-12 or something? That's not much of a difference.
Yeah, yes, but Neil, you can be a difference maker without filling out the stat sheet because, he'll probably get a large contract based on his name. And yes, this is probably the twilight of his career, if not the downside of it. But he will still command a double team on almost every play that he's out there. That allows for everybody else in your front seven to either get to the ball or make a play.
Let's not forget his nickname, too, JJ SWAT. And I don't know how many batted balls he had this year, but he had a number of them against Cam Newton. Now, that's not apparently difficult because Cam Newton can't throw a ball anyway. But
yeah, I don't like self-appointed nicknames. JJ Pratt when it comes to
that. You want to hear some pitches for Shaq Barrett? We'll start with Crazy Jared, who says, okay, I know the Giants addressed our bottom-of-the-barrel linebacker crew last year to great degree, but we aren't there yet. Adding a stud like Shaq Barrett would immediately vault the Giants linebacker crew from like 15 to 20-ish to a top 10 crew. Giants secondary is sufficient, so focusing on linebacker and D-line has to be the way to go defensively. It'll be a big money acquisition, but Giants have more than enough room to get it done. Are the Giants a Shaq Barrett away from, well, they are from the playoffs because it doesn't take much to get in the playoffs in the NFC East, but
no.
Come on. This is not even worth the conversation because there's no way he's leaving Tampa Bay. No way they'll let him go.
Well,
not to mention,
so which free agent is Tampa Bay letting go?
Hold on.
Because they're not keeping all of them.
He's an edge rusher, not a linebacker. There's a difference there. So to say that he's a linebacker is kind of a bit of a misnomer. You know, they play a, quote, 3-4 defense, but it's really 2 down linemen and 4 linebackers in that front 7 or front 6, if you will.
You know, James,
he's an edge rusher.
You're showing the sort of football acumen I didn't think you had.
Excuse you? This is what happens when you're a fan of Washington your whole life.
You're absolutely right, though. And I think if Tampa Bay lets anyone go, they'll let Godwin go because they've got Brown, they've got Miller, they've got Evans, they've got Brate, they've got Howard. Plenty of pass catchers there for Tommy Boy. And I think they've got – I think we saw in the Super Bowl.
Brown is a rookie wide receiver. Who's Johnson, the rookie wide receiver they had this season? Who
exactly,
stepped up a couple of games? Yeah. So.
Quite right. So I think you saw in the Super Bowl how valuable Barrett was to that. There's no way he gets out of town. Plus, who wants to leave Tampa Bay? Who wants to leave? I mean, they've got.
They only have. All right. So wait. $9 million in cap space. That's what Tampa Bay currently has. Your free agents are Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette. That's it for offense. And Ndamukong Suh, Kevin Minter, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Deion Buchanan, Ross Cockrell, and your place kicker, Ryan Suckup.
But Jay, I mean,
you have $9 million. How are you spreading that about all those guys?
Your hate for the Buccaneers is almost like they stole your quarterback who went on to win the Super Bowl.
There's no hate. I'm just presenting the facts. You have $9 million in cap space. You can't keep all these guys. You may only be able to keep one of them.
Mm-hmm. You and your facts. Good.
I think Levante David is the one guy out of all of them that I mentioned you cannot let go. And then it's, I would say Shaq Barrett is definitely a priority. But again, you're going to have to keep your quarterback happy. And your quarterback likes Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski.
It's interesting because
just saying.
That quarterbacks realize that you can actually win and have fun in the same time. After all those years.
How much is that quarterback getting paid, and what is he willing to sacrifice to get those guys?
He's been down the sacrifice road. He's not willing to sacrifice anything anymore.
Oh, well, then he won't be getting, Gronk and Brown back.
Well, trust me, it's all the Buccaneers are very interesting. Will be a very interesting cause here in this offseason.
But understand, the Buccaneers made their playoff run truly on the strength of the defense. I'm not taking anything away from the offense. Yes, the offense did what it was supposed to do when it was on the field, but that defense, especially those in the front 6, I won't say front 7 because again the way they play. And teams spread the ball out more so that, nowadays.
Nicely done, James. Nicely done.
That front 6, the 2 primary linebackers, your edge rushers, and those 2 down linemen. That's pretty much where they won all their games. Those 6 players were the guys making plays. You know, Sue, Vita Vea, JPP, David, Shaq Barrett, who we just mentioned. They need those guys back. They need them back. And of them, David and Shaq Barrett and Sue are free agents. You need David. You have to. You have to have him back. I mean, we saw one game without David this year, and the defense looked like shambles. I mean, they couldn't get to the spots they needed to be. So you definitely need David back. And Shaq Barrett's pretty much the best pass rusher they have. So,
yeah. I mean,
you could let go of Sue, and hopefully somebody on your depth chart steps up and just occupies bodies. And don't get me wrong, Sue did make some plays, but his main focus was to occupy at least 2 bodies on that offensive line so that everybody else can beat their one-on-one block.
Well, if you thought that us talking about the Bucs is fun, wait till you hear us talk about the Raiders. Monty, our pretend Raiders superfan, has written in his top targets. Leonard Williams, Las Vegas can't afford him, but it would be so fun on Slack to tag Crazy Jared every time he made a play. At the edge, Yannick Ngakoue, they were interested in him last year. Give him a longer deal. Stop kicking him around the league like a red-bearded stepchild and give him a home. Look at that. Monty was already on your gingivitis kick, Neil.
Oh yeah. Gingerism. Monty is a man of the people. All people. No matter what color their hair, he's there.
Melvin Ingram, connection with Gus Bradley, and would make sense to be a mentor to this young defense. Richard Sherman, I know he lost a step and is expensive, but Las Vegas lost at least 3 games I can remember on blown coverages at the end of the game. Worth it just to get the secondary to line up correctly. Gruden accused of tampering while talking to Sherman on the Chris Collinsworth podcast. Sherm seems to like Gus from the old Legion of Boom days.
Yeah, let me tell you.
All of this would require restructuring DC, Trent Brown's big deals. Not opposed to this idea. Slippery slope to keep doing that. See the 21 Saints salary cap situation. Doubtful, but it would be fun to have one player sign and give the defense some juice and teach the kids how to study film and get better. All of this was said. Never mind the Saints salary cap situation. Raiders, according to Over the Cap, $18.6 million over the cap. And as I look at their free agents, they cut Tyrell Williams to give them $11 million in cap space. But Zay Jones and Nelson Aguilar are both free agents. And I know, James, we can say what we want about Nelson Aguilar, but he kind of had a resurgence in Las Vegas last year. Just saying. Jonathan Hankins is a free agent. Vic Beasley is a free agent. Raekwon McMillan's a free agent. And Eric Harris are a free agent. That's 4 starters on defense. Not to mention a number of backups on defense also listed as free agents for the Raiders. Raiders have a lot of roster holes that they got to fill and not a lot of money to do it. I don't think they're getting a high-priced free agent in here.
I would say no. Unless somebody really wants to go to the Raiders.
They're 18.
I can't see them luring anybody there. Someone really has to be like, my first choice is to play for the Raiders.
But $18.5 million over the cap, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tough.
Well, they're not 18 anymore. They cut Tyrell Williams, so they gained $11 million back, but they're still over the cap.
Still over the cap,
still $7 million.
Yeah, I would say you mentioned there the Richard Sherman and Chris Collinsworth podcast, and I tell you, I don't like to diss other podcasts, but that one is terrible. Have you listened to that? My God, it's awful.
Thank goodness, no. And what are you doing listening to other podcasts? You should only be listening to Next Fan Up.
I thought I'd go there and try and learn something and see if it was. I just couldn't stand it. It was just
learn something. I've taught you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Wait. Back to the football part of this. Is Richard Sherman willing to switch from corner to safety? Because if he plans on playing corner going forward, he's going to start getting picked on.
Well, James, that's right, but isn't he more a zone cornerback? And
at this point in his career, yeah. I
if you're a zone corner, you don't rely.
He can play some man in the early days of the Legion of Boom, and he can be physical with the wide receiver down the field. But yes, right now he's probably more so of a zone. You call cover 3 and let him just drift back there to whatever comes on his side. But
you can prolong your career that way.
Who knew there was going to be so many X's and O's in this show? My goodness. Well done.
James has clearly swallowed a book.
Josh didn't really give me any targets as much as he just wrote state of the Lions free agency right now. But MJ, our Atlanta Falcons superfan, has written, who should the Dirty Birds look to acquire in free agency? That's a good question. Well, that's why we asked it, MJ. And speaking of MJs, he would go with Matt Judon from the Ravens. While Judon didn't have his best year last year, he remains one of the best edge rushers hitting free agency this offseason. What could he bring to the Dirty Birds? Much needed pressure on opposing team's quarterback. In addition to sack totals, when he does not get sacks, the pressure he puts on quarterbacks is real, and it's game-changing. By the way, the Ravens are losing not only, well, I shouldn't say losing, but it's not just Judon the Ravens have to worry about losing in their linebacking core, but Pernell McPhee, Yannick Ngakoue, and Tyus Bowser, who, by the way, is also a key rebuild on my Madden Patriots teams, are also key free agents for them on defense, along with Derek Wolfe, their defensive end. The Ravens have some troubles. What do we think of Matt Judon and the Atlanta Falcons? Can that work?
It could, but I mean, what's the cap situation? And yeah, they pretty much need almost everything on defense.
Yeah,
I mean,
the Falcons cap situation,
yeah.
$37.6 million over.
Yeah. And look, what Raheem Morris did with that defense after he took over was a turnaround. It got better, but it still wasn't a unit you could rely on week in and week out. So, yeah, pass rush was a glaring issue because the only way the Falcons really got any pressure on opposing team quarterbacks last season was by blitzing. They're down 4, couldn't do anything.
Can one of you explain to me how such a poor team like the Falcons can be $37 million over the cap? How? Well, who are they paying?
Matt Ryan and Julio Jones.
Yeah. That is a lot, though. I mean that is there's a lot of good quarterbacks getting paid in this league, but surely, I mean, that's a hell of a money.
Hayden Hurst was also the top tight end in last year's free agency class, so they paid him quite a bit of money.
But they're not paying their defense, are they?
As I'm looking at their defense, Grady Jarrett, I think, has a large contract. Dante Fowler probably has a larger than average contract. Deion Jones, Keanu Neal is a free agent, which could be good news for them as he's oft injured. Ricardo Allen, I'll bet it gets paid more than the average safety. By the way, the Falcons also released Ricardo Allen and defensive end Alan Bailey. That's breaking news from Adam Schefter, just to throw this into the Falcons conversation.
Because that is a lot of money to be over the cap with such a poor team.
They actually, Keanu Neal is their only defensive starter that's a free agent, but they have a lot of depth that's free agency that they're going to have to replace, which again would be their blessing in disguise because it'll be for depth. Younghoe Koo, also a free agent, their kicker.
All pro.
Yeah. Yep. Todd Gurley, free agent this season. So they're starting right now. Their running backs on contract are Ito Smith and Kadre Ollison. Again, blessing in disguise. Todd Gurley, a free agent. They don't need to re-sign him.
And Neil, remember the debacle of Super Bowl 50? Was it 51?
28-3.
The year before, the year before, and that year after winning that Super Bowl, a lot of players got paid.
Yeah, it's fair, James. It just strikes you, doesn't it, when you look at that list on that over the cap business? It's wow, it's really bad. I mean, it's only the Eagles and the Saints that are worse.
The fact that the cap is only at 180.5. Now the cap could be larger than
for
that.
now. Yeah, now. It could go up, but for right now, 180.5 is as low as it's going to go.
Right. So, anyway, that's what we got here for you, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of Next Fan Up today.
Well, not really. I do have two things I want to touch on.
James, you're supposed to do this on the outline. Why didn't you give me?
Yeah, come on, James.
On the outline,
James, prepare for this podcast, James. Read the outline. No, there's an outline.
Well, because they're not Eagles related. That's why. And my apologies. But no, there is one thing I want to talk about because it was brought up during the press.
Kirk Cousins, is it?
No, it's not. Again, it's mostly league news. The first thing I want to talk about is very, very serious because it was brought up during the commissioner's press conference before the Super Bowl. And as an investigation finds that there are questions and possible discrimination against former black players in the NFL concussions claims. If you remember a couple of years ago, several former players filed suit against the league and won a settlement for, I forgot what it was, like several hundreds of millions of dollars. And there's a testing procedure in place for these former players to get the funds for the medical needs that warrant their continued treatment or just to live a better quality of life post-football. Unfortunately, those baseline tests are skewed as far as who gets paid what in what tiers. And several African-American players are being discriminated against because they're differentiating their baselines for having sustained damage to the brain or suffering from concussions is different from their white counterparts. Why does that matter? Because psychiatrists and other medical experts say that in medicine, yes, you can't take, different races and say that they have the same mitigating factors for trauma or illness. But when the baseline is the same for all of these former players, they all played in the NFL for X number of years. They all sustained in one form or another some type of trauma to the head, which is why they're filing these claims. That shouldn't be a factor. So this is something there are articles up on both USA Today, ESPN, CNN. If you want to go further looking into that, it is something that's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm pretty sure we're going to hear more about it in the off season, but in this day and age, it's not something you can be using to determine who gets benefits towards their medical coverage post-career, because you want to change the goalpost, if you will, as far as what determines who deserves treatment or who deserves funds for treatment and who doesn't. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. The other thing I wanted to mention, which I found kind of funny, speaking of the quarterback talk that we did earlier, the amount of quarterback moving this offseason, and so far we've seen 3 quarterbacks change teams and possibly more. The predictions is that it could be upwards of 10 quarterbacks changing teams at minimum. Haven't seen this much change at behind center since 1999 when the 30 teams from 98, 14 teams changed quarterbacks. So.
That wasn't funny at all.
Now that was funny. How did those teams perform in 99? Different from 98.
Oh, wow.
That would be interesting to look into.
Almost all of them pretty much struggled. But there were names in there like the Eagles in 99 chose Donovan McNabb. Of course, Doug Peterson was the opening day starter. Washington jettisoned. Washington acquired Brad Johnson from Minnesota, who was the starter in 98 there.
Great move.
And, Randall Cunningham was the opening day starter in 99, coming off, their phenomenal 15-1 season. So it's Doug Flutie was the quarterback in 99 for the Bills. The previous year they had Rob Johnson. And that constant back and forth that continued to perpetuate itself out there. So, yeah, it was very interesting going through that article and looking at all those teams and who had, who the quarterbacks were in 98 and the changeover to 99. So definitely a good read on ESPN.com if you want to go check that out.
If the Bills had only stuck with the former Patriots great Doug Flutie, it would have been great things for them. But no, they didn't know greatness when they had it.
So who won the Super Bowl that year, James, in 99? Who were the top teams in that? And were they teams with settled quarterbacks? Well,
one of those teams who did switch quarterbacks was the and no, you're not going to like this, was the St. Louis Rams. Trent Green was scheduled to be the opening day starter. He was the starter in Washington the year before, and he got hurt in the preseason. Some guy named Kurt Warner took over.
Mm-hmm. Was that 99? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was 99.
And that was the Titans with Steve McNair. Coming up a yard short.
One of the few teams who kept the quarterback. Steve McNair, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning. I'm trying to remember one of the other names off the top of my head, but those are the guys who stayed put.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we shall see. We with the quarterback movement and how this all plays out. I believe the Carson Wentz domino was the one that needed to fall. I think we'll see falling now. The league tweeting out, or not tweeting, they sent a memo out about the expected salary cap floor. That gives teams now an idea of what they need to do to get things done. And so I think we're going to see this is where things are going to start moving.
Just to pick you up then, Jay, on that, you say this is where things will start moving. Who's moving and where are they going? Who's next, do you think, on the list?
Well, I think you mentioned the Bears. Bears need a guy. Patriots need a guy.
But who though?
The Raiders The Raiders are looking to get rid of a guy. The 49ers are reportedly looking to get rid of a guy, although I don't think they're getting rid of a guy.
The Raiders are not getting rid of a guy.
So is Deshaun Watson the next one to fall? Is he the next guy to fall? Because that's what you need, isn't it? You need to keep these guys moving now. So we now know the Colts have got the guy. So who's next?
I think it'll be. I don't think it'll be the Patriots getting Marcus Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's going to go for cheap. If Carson Wentz is a third, Marcus Mariota is a fourth or a fifth. The Patriots can give that up easy. Mm. Frankly, the Patriots could give up a third for Marcus Mariota, and they still have. I mean, the compensatory picks haven't come in, but the Patriots are obviously getting one big one from Tom Brady, not to mention a whole bunch of others from all the free agents they lost.
So do you think, Jay, do you think then that maybe a week or so ago we thought, wow, Matt Stafford for what was basically a first and a third or something, is that right? Maybe more than that? And everybody thought, wow, this is going to be a lot of picks moving around. And all of a sudden we've been hit with this today, where it's a starting quarterback, or was a starting quarterback, and obviously thought to be a very promising player, goes for a bag of nothing. Do you think that reshapes the trade market for quarterbacks? I mean, does it lower Watson's price?
Yes.
Does it make Derek Carr one first round pick now instead of two? How do you think that plays out?
Yes, the Texans should be very unhappy about the Carson Wentz trade because they had a much more valuable commodity before this trade went down. But the price tag has definitely been lowered because any team that would be pursuing Watson is immediately going to be like, well, I can go get this other guy. And yeah, he's not Deshaun Watson, but I don't have to give up 3 first-round draft picks and Christian McCaffrey for him.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the Rams might think they've overpaid for Stafford then?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the Rams care. The Rams strategy is clearly not in the NFL draft. It's in free agency.
Yeah, the Rams are looking to win now every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not building anything. I'm trying to remember the last draft picks who have impacted the team on some level outside of Aaron Donald and before he was traded, Jared Goff. Because almost everyone they've drafted up to this point who went to the Super Bowl, most of those players are gone. I mean, they cut Todd Gurley. Mm-hmm. The wide receivers they have, aside from Cooper Kupp, were all brought in from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we're going way long, and this is not part of the outline. But just to bring this up about the Rams again, the Rams will eventually crumble. And I don't think their strategy is one that they'll be able to maintain long term, because ultimately it means you have to be all in on the quarterback of that moment. Mm-hmm. So they were all in on Jared Goff until they weren't. Now they're all in on Matthew Stafford for at least 3 years because they don't have any draft capital for 3 years.
So then you also wonder then what effect does it have on these? Our guy was saying 5 quarterbacks going in the first round of the draft. Does this make it harder for a team like the Panthers or the Eagles or the Patriots to move up in the draft now that we're going to have all these other quarterbacks, the veteran quarterbacks, maybe settled by the time we get to the draft?
That's an interesting question. I think the reason why I would say the reason why we're seeing these veteran quarterbacks moving so much is because this draft class, I brought it up with Brian, and he sort of pushed it away as saying, well, there's always 3 or 4 busts in the first round of every draft class, even the greatest draft classes. And we mentioned the 83 class with Marino and Elway and Kelly and the likes. Even that draft class had, 2 or 3 busts in the first round. I think that's sort of what the NFL is looking at these guys this year, and especially understanding that this is a draft class that is the most difficult to assess due to COVID, with no combine, with no other than a pro day ability to work these prospects out. And some of these quarterbacks who are slated as, a top pick, didn't even play last season. So it's going to be interesting.
You do wonder who's going to be the Todd Blackledge and the Tony Eason of this draft class. Right? Even Ken O'Brien, if you wanted to be harsh.
I'm just going to say Tony Eason did bring a team to the Super Bowl.
He did.
Just saying.
Yeah, how'd that turn out?
They got there, though. That's half the battle.
Where was that Super Bowl?
The battle?
I think Tony Eason is still laying out there on that field.
Yeah, where was it they played that Super Bowl? Where was that? Where did that take place? Because they're still finding bits of him on the field.
The other half of the battle is winning it. All right. So the format got blown up at the end of the show. Surprise, surprise. It's Neil and James. They weren't going to actually follow the rules. But we'll be back next week. I will tell you for future episodes, things that you can look forward to. We will re-rank or we will properly grade the draft from 4 years ago, whether that's 2016 or 2017. I'll let you make the decision, Neil. Which of those 2 drafts do you want to re-rank? Or we could re-rank both of them. Who cares?
Well, I think you could do both, but I think with today's trade and the fact that Goff also was traded, that's the first 2 picks of that draft in 16 who have been failures. Let's face it. So that might be worth redoing.
So there you go. So 2016 will be a future episode of the Next Fan Up podcast.
Plus you and I can rub it into James, Even better.
At least I got a Super Bowl out of it.
We will also be looking at position by position breakdowns, both in the draft and in NFL free agency. Brian Bosarge will be back again at some point. He won't be here every week, but we'll definitely be talking with Brian throughout this offseason, through this draft season, especially once pro days start kicking up in March. So lots of things to look forward to. And we want to hear from you. nextfanup@gmail.com. Send us those emails. You can tweet us at NFU Podcast. Facebook.com/NFU Podcast. Another great way to get in touch with us. And tell a friend about us. And you can check out the website, nextfanup.wordpress.com. Is that the website? I think so. Something like that. Where we'll have some things posted there, including many of Doc's recipes are already there. So do yourself a favor and check that out.
Yeah, and Doc, if you're listening, get the asparagus recipes on the go for next week.
You now have a direct link to Doc. You can reach out to him directly, and he'll more than be happy than give you an asparagus recipe. If he even likes asparagus. I don't know. He is a chef, so he does like vegetables, unlike me.
I think he's an asparagus sort of man.
Frankly, I like everything au gratin.
Wow,
this podcast is au gratin.
It's like
is it over yet?
It's like we're in some boulevard in Paris.
Boulevard.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Bonjour, mes amis. There you have it. I couldn't figure out there you have it in French. It's been a long time.
Thank goodness for that. The listeners will be happy to know that.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together. And through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.